Right now, everyone seems to be talking about Epstein's list. But is the reality that the list never mattered at all? And just what's going to happen once this gets replaced by something else in the news cycle? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about this. Okay, so this has been all over at least the social media news cycle, and it's pretty infuriating given the fact that almost every official in the Trump administration said they were going to be releasing all the Epstein files, the Epstein list. And when push came to shove, they said, actually, just kidding, there's no list, there's no files, there's no evidence of any sort of trafficking that took place, which is a really hot take given that, again, Epstein was sitting in jail facing trafficking charges, and his associate was charged with trafficking. But trafficking those women to who? Well, obviously, no one knows. But here's the real problem. Everybody thinks that there's going to be some sort of list or some kind of file that's going to be a smoking gun, and that once that gets out into the public, somehow the people that committed these crimes won't be able to hide any longer. But the reality is that they're already out in the open. And we have all the information we need to pretty much figure out who was involved. So then the question is, why is everyone so strung up about a list? Here's an example, right? Now, one, I want to point out that, yeah, I summarized this with AI, and AI is kind of illusory, but you can vet already court documents from the Ghislaine Maxwell conviction, where you see, literally, this is in 118 pages of flight logs, every single person who flew on the Epstein jet. And all of this took place, by the way, well after he was convicted. So just for context, right? Imagine you have a friend who has 15 DUIs, and he invites you over to his house on a Friday night. Guys, is it really a secret what you're going to be doing there? He's going to be knocking back some Bud Lights, a lot of Bud Lights. And so if you're going to go there, you are too. So if you are someone who made repeated flights or visits to Mr. Epstein's plane, island, or homes after he was convicted of literally running a sex trafficking operation, well, we should just sort of assume that this is someone who either literally was there to facilitate these or viewed those kind of activities as so unbelievably commonplace that it literally didn't even faze them at all, right? Either way, we should really treat these as individuals who probably are criminals, right? And if not convicted criminals, they should at least be, it's fair to say, alleged. We'll use the word alleged because I don't want to get sued by notable lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who appears multiple times in just the last page of these flight logs. But interestingly, so does Harvard president Larry Summers. Yeah, right. There's all sorts of names. And thanks to the power of AI, right, we could see all the prominent individuals, and we can even ask it to summarize for us the evidence that they were involved, right? Obviously, everybody knows about Prince Andrew, a widely circulated photograph, but there were also sworn testimony by some of the female victims, as well as flight logs indicating that they were on the same flights together. And a third party, another accuser, said that Prince Andrew was also involved. There's also, of course, we talked about the photographs. Prince Andrew himself admitting to staying in the mansion, saying it was a convenient place to stay, right? As you know, when you're an unbelievably wealthy and prominent person in a city like New York, there's almost no hotels, actually, for rich people in New York. It's almost unheard of. But the fact is that you have, Democratic President Bill Clinton, who also appears all over these flight logs. And again, a third party, another victim testifying that Epstein basically explicitly said Clinton was there for these, I'm trying to not get demonetized, but basically there's no way to cover this story without getting demonetized, which is sort of its own interesting thing. And I'm going to actually take a second to say that I cover a lot of controversial issues on this podcast, and I have a lot of unfavorable takes towards politicians and other prominent figures that advertisers really like to stay on their good graces. that means, of course, that I depend on you guys to support me. And if you want to, you can do so over on combatvetnews.com. This is like my Patreon. Uncensored combat videos drop every Tuesday and Thursday, including some sent to me from units on the front lines of Ukraine. Just on Thursday or on Tuesday, we took a look at some drone tech that literally hasn't even been publicly disclosed yet. So if you want to see that, as well as an archive of tons and tons of videos that YouTube would never let me show you in 1,000 years, you want to become a member and keep me independent, keep me able to speak truth to power for whatever good it does. Okay. But this is, I think, the key thing to take away from this, right? You have comparable amounts of evidence with Donald Trump. Again, this isn't a one-off. These are public statements that are on record. These are audio recordings, flight logs, right? And again, Alan Dershowitz, same thing. You also have Larry Summers, and you have Bill Gates, right? There's a huge number of these very prominent people, and there's tons and tons of evidence that they were at least deeply involved in Epstein's operations. Again, the analogy that I would use is your neighbor who spends every weekend drunk. When he invites you over to watch the game, we all know what you're going to be doing there, right? And similarly, if someone who has publicly been convicted of trafficking minors, if you hang out with them a bunch of times, what else? What other conclusion can there be to draw? I also want to point out that Bill Gates, this is just brilliant stuff, right? Gates's official stance is that he said his meetings with Epstein were focused on philanthropy, believing Epstein could help him secure funding for global health initiatives, a core focus. Gates said it was a huge mistake. But then his wife was like, yo, I divorced him because of his association with Epstein, which is weird that you would divorce somebody for having a meeting about just finances, right? Imagine, would your wife divorce you because she didn't like your financial advisor? Maybe your financial advisor was providing you with underage girls. She'd probably be justified. So this is, I think, this is the issue. The issue is not, should these people be in jail, right? Because here's the thing. There isn't enough evidence to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt to get a conviction in U.S. court that any of these individuals, right, on this flight log, did things sufficiently illegal. However, you can review them yourself. But what I want to point out, and this is the real core of why I think this list doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter because the people who we already know were involved and associated, not only have they faced no consequences at all, but they've actually, in most cases, had their careers enhanced after their association with Epstein. And that should tell you everything you need to know about whether or not there's going to be any accountability for these individuals. As we pointed out, you just saw a handwritten document of Epstein's flight logs submitted in court, approved, that Larry Summers, Harvard president, Clinton administration, Secretary of the Treasury, 8th Director of the National Economic Council, Chief Economist of the World Bank, Undersecretary of the Treasury for International Affairs, Larry Summers, was repeatedly and frequently a guest of the on Epstein's jet, right? Literally, again, repeatedly meeting and soliciting donations from Jeffrey Epstein. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Epstein donated to Harvard's fund. He also, Summers asked Epstein for advice for his wife, a Harvard professor, who, by the way, guys, Harvard professors don't make that much money, who was seeking an online poetry project. He said, quote, "My life would be better if I raise $1 million for Lisa ideas." Which is hilarious because, again, if you know anything about the internet, you know that publishing poetry online costs $0, right? We could literally publish poetry online in like 30 seconds. So what on earth that $1 million is for? Well, the answer is, of course, to line his wife's pockets. But look, you can see tons and tons and tons of meetings and contact between these two, including, again, not just professional meetings, but personal flights between Summers and Epstein. But what does that do, right? Surely this level of association with a convicted sex trafficker would be a career killer for old Larry Summers. Not so. not so, right? As you can see, even after, right, becoming president of Harvard, even after all of this sort of stuff came out, right, he instead is, let's see, he was basically president of Harvard till 2006, when he ended up resigning. But then afterward, Harvard made him a university professor, one of 20 university-wide professorships in the Kennedy School of Government. He also was a member of the panel of eminent persons, which got to review the work of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, and a member of the Group of 30, and served as a major think tank's council, including facilitating a meeting between that council and President of China Xi Jinping. So I think the thing to take away, I think it's fair to say that old Larry Summers, man, he really just never faced any consequences at all. Continued to travel in the absolute most prestigious circles of international finance. I mean, look, he became a special advisor at Andreessen Horowitz, right? Just truly insane, right? Remained an extreme, oh my gosh, he was one of the leading candidates to become chairman of the Federal Reserve, and he was also a preferred candidate by the cabinet of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu to be the governor of the Bank of Israel, and Netanyahu personally asked him to take the post. Again, imagine the level of preposterousness, right? The association, the strength of association with Epstein got you, again, these like ultra prestige jobs. And also worth discussing is the fact that, well, the person who gave him his initial pardon when he was convicted the first time, or his ultra extremely sweetheart deal, Alexander Acosta, right? The United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. What's notable is that despite an unbelievable amount of controversy around him, for basically letting a wealthy sex trafficker off the hook, he became dean of a college of law, and then became the United States Secretary of Labor. Talk about falling upward. I mean, this is my gripe, right? You could look at the same thing with Alan Dershowitz. This is someone who, again, was brought on to defend Trump's impeachment hearings in 2020, defended Harvey Weinstein, defended Julian Assange, of course, defended his friend Jeffrey Epstein, also appears all over the flight logs. But what is troubling, again, is that this is someone who should be radioactive, right? I'm not saying that you could get a conviction for these guys, as we saw, right? Even P. Diddy, somebody who basically committed trafficking and sexual assault in view of hundreds of other people, still got off basically scot-free. But that doesn't mean that you can't cancel the guy. And I'm not Mr. Cancel Culture, but like sometimes you just got to cancel somebody. Just like, would you hire someone who you knew did these things? Would you hire somebody, for example, if you knew that they were in the same house that a child abuser, right? But they say, well, I never got convicted of doing those things with those children. I was just living in the house with them. You'd go, no, dude, you can't work for me. Like, why are any of these people seen as hireable? That is the lowest bar. You cannot hire somebody. You cannot bring them into your organization for any reason. You can have no reason. You can give them no reason at all. And that, to me, is the takeaway, is that the public themselves don't seem to care, or they don't have a say, right? And I think that's what sort of troubles me about all this. And so it's almost like a red herring. It's almost like the public is continually fed things about Jeffrey Epstein. And the more it becomes a controversy, the more people go, the list, or the more people ask questions that aren't relevant. Like, what happened in the jail cell? FYI, guys, if you are a lifelong intelligence asset, or if you're just somebody who knows how much of a disaster this trial is going to be for your friends, and that there's no chance of your defense, do you need someone else to tell you Do you need someone else to do the thing you have to do for you? Do you see what I mean? It's the same reason pilots in the Cold War were given a cyanide capsule, not because they were told, listen, you can't fall into the hands of the Soviets. You know too much. So you need to do your last act as an act of loyalty to your country and your profession. You need to, the final act of honor for your country or whatever. Did they need someone else to do the job for them? Didn't matter. Didn't matter. And so these questions that don't matter, is there a list? Does he have a list of his clients? Does it matter? Like, does it matter? What would you do with that list? What if everyone was on the list? The people we already know have huge, unbelievably strong associations with this guy. Nothing has happened to them. The only person who has introduced any measurable consequences to any one of these people has been Bill Gates' wife, which is wild that the only person to even attempt to hold any of Epstein's clients accountable is literally a dude's wife who was like, at the very least, I can take half of your money and publicly say, I'm divorcing you because of what you did with Epstein, right? And so this is all, what is the point of all this? Why am I saying this? I think part of it is to understand the scale of manipulation around these sort of things, around these non-issues, right? And it's a little bit like the 9/11 conspiracies, right? There were real deep problems with not just U.S. intelligence, but U.S. acceptance of some of the things that the Saudi intelligence agents did. And if you do a quick Google search, you can see there's extensive reporting, extensive court cases about Saudi intelligence's connection to the hijackers. But in order to obscure this uncomfortable truth, there's been this sort of media movement to layer on top of it an absurd conspiracy theory and a focus on a bunch of things that don't matter, like jet fuel and steel beams. There's no chance this video is going to be monetized. But the reality is that it doesn't matter. Just like it doesn't matter whether it doesn't matter what brought down the towers. Whatever the answer is wouldn't be relevant. Just like this, it doesn't matter because you, the public, don't seem to care. Or because the powers that be are so powerful that it's not relevant. They don't need to be held accountable. There's no mechanism. There's no public outcry. So that, I think, is the takeaway. And you notice that almost all of these figures, by the way, are ultra politicized for other reasons, right? Again, Larry Summers, super public, super outspoken as a critic of Trump. You could see, right? Trump himself, unbelievably controversial. Bill and Hillary Clinton, right? Again, the Clintons subject to massive conspiracy theories, almost none of which have to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Again, you look at the Royals. You look at Bill Gates, a classic example of someone who is subject to real, far-fetched conspiracy theories about microchips and vaccines, while the fact that there's a real conspiracy he was a part of is just simply ignored. He's simply given a pass. He's still honored. He still gives a bunch of talks. And the question you got to left with is why? And the thing that I think is sad and disturbing is that there's all these female victims. They outnumber the perpetrators almost certainly, right? Their names are known to the court. Many of them have come forward, have been in documentaries, have given sworn statements about exactly what they were doing. And despite that, right, despite outnumbering the perpetrators just have so much connection to wealth and power that the truth doesn't even matter. The evidence doesn't matter. And the values that each political side, by the way, pretends to espouse, right? The right is the party of protect kids from corruption, from being sexualized, from being indoctrinated with sort of, again, being sexualized by adults. Well, where are they? Well, they still cheered Alan Dershowitz when he went out there and defended Trump. They still cheer Trump. And the party of believe women, protect women, male predators, the patriarchy. They're still out there cheering for Larry Summers. He's still sitting at Harvard. He's still, Bill Clinton is still giving talks and walking around waving at crowds. Where's the accountability for what we do know? So what good is a list going to do you? What good what good would 10 more people on the list do you? Are you going to charge them? Is anyone going to charge them? Are you going to demand that they be fired? You haven't demanded that Larry Summers be fired. You haven't demanded that Alan Dershowitz be fired. So that's the takeaway, guys. Anyway, probably never going to get another sponsor again after this one. Thanks to you guys, the Colonel tier members, like James J21, Yanko Georgiev, Chris Gorsuch, Paul Templeton, Citronic, Steve Moran, TR Need, Alan Lutz, and CM Holmes, all of our Lieutenant tier members. You literally enable me to make controversial videos like this, and boy, do I appreciate it. And just know I am absolutely not having any thoughts of hurting myself. Cheers.